Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Jeffrey Epstein Show. I'm your host, Bobbycapucci, and this is Daily Drop number 349. Today we're going to talk about one of the more tragic figures in this whole entire Epstein escapade, and that person is Haley Robson. Now, Haley Robson was just a little girl herself when she was brought into Jeffrey Epstein's orbit and abused, and then in turn became one of Jeffrey Epstein's recruiters. And we're not talking about a recruiter who was, going to bars to find girls or going to, the local pub, all right? We're talking about a high school girl who was recruiting other high school girls. We're talking freshmen here, folks, all right? So Haley Robson is one of the more tragic stories, and when this all first started to come out in Florida, when it was first breaking, Haley Robson was actually investigated by the police for her role. And we know that the Palm Beach Police Department did a really good job down there. They did a very thorough job. They investigated everything, and it was them who initiated the federal investigation. It wasn't the state attorneys. So when we talk about Haley Robson, she was investigated by the Palm Beach Police Department, and it was determined that she wasn't going to face charges for this. She was abused herself. She was just a little girl, and she wasn't like some of these other people who have come out and said, oh, I was a victim of Jeffrey Epstein too, but meanwhile stayed in Epstein's orbit even after he was arrested, stayed loyal to Epstein. We don't see that with Haley Robson. And now she has come forward several times to tell her story. And in the new book, The Spider, she is telling her story once again. More context to that story, I should say. And we have an excerpt from that here from OK Magazine and Chris Spargo. So let's jump into this article and see what Haley Robson has to say in the book, The Spider. Headline: Jeffrey Epstein recruiter was raped before a pedophile paid the teen to lure in girls. This article was authored by Chris Spargo. So, again, Haley Robson, in my opinion, is one of the most tragic figures in this whole entire thing. And I think that it is just downright horrible what this girl has went through and what she has to live with, right? Bringing these other girls in. And when you're a kid, you don't really understand the stakes. You don't understand the consequences. So with Haley Robson being just a young girl herself and the lure of that money, look, man, if you have never been broke, if you have never been poor, you don't know what lengths you would go to make a couple of bucks, especially as a kid, and especially when you have people like Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell normalizing this shit. So when we talk about Haley Robson, I always just shake my head, and I really, really have a lot of empathy for this girl. Haley Robson was just a teenager when she first met Epstein. She arrived at his home to give the pedophile a massage after being told it was easy money by other girls. That's important too, other girls. We need to establish who all of these girls are. When I say we, I mean the prosecution, right? I have nothing to do with that. We have nothing to do with that. But the prosecution needs to establish who all these other girls were. All these girls from Palm Beach are a huge part of this story that is not being discussed, as if what happened in Palm Beach is over and done with. That is not the case. We know that the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals is convening and hearing the arguments about what occurred in Florida. And if they overturn that non-prosecution agreement, it is going to send shockwaves through this case. All of those girls who were abused in Palm Beach, and remember, only one of them got to speak in front of the grand jury, but all of those girls who were abused, we're talking dozens and dozens of girls, Epstein only got nailed for that one charge, that one count of solicitation. But yet, we know that there were tons of girls. We know that Haley Robson and other girls, it was the pyramid scheme, right? And all of these other girls that were around before Haley Robson, who were they? You see, it just gets murkier and murkier, and we get more questions as we hunt for answers. What happened next was a series of events that almost landed Robson in jail and exacerbated the pain she was already dealing with after being raped that same year. And you see it again here with Haley Robson, right? Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell, they had a penchant for finding girls who were broken in some regard. Either they had a rough upbringing, they might have been raped like Haley, they had drug problems, whatever it may be. They searched those girls out. And when they found them, they provided that air of stability, right? A false stability. Oh yeah, you're with us now. We're going to take care of you. And then they normalized all of this abuse. They normalized this lifestyle. I was a teenager when I met Jeffrey and became one of his victims. But that's not how the police and the media painted me. They viewed me as guilty because I recruited other girls for Jeffrey, recalls Robson and author Barry Levine's The Spider Inside the Criminal Web of Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. Look, I can understand why at first when all this was coming out, the media would have been going a bit crazy about it, right? Nobody knew the details. Still to this day, we're still trying to hammer out the details. But with Haley Robson, you start hearing about a girl who procured other girls, and right away you're like, holy shit, what kind of psycho is this? And then, of course, once you add the context, you understand that Haley was just an abused girl herself. So the mental anguish that she deals with on a daily basis, I can't even imagine, honestly. What the media doesn't know, and what I've never revealed until this writing, is how emotionally broken I was before I arrived at Jeffrey's mansion in Palm Beach. I had been raped. I never pressed charges or told my friends. I buried myself in drugs and alcohol to cope with my pain. And how many times do you see that in abuse victims or any person who is surviving trauma? A lot of times the only escape you can find is with alcohol or drugs. And we all know that just compounds your problem, right? But when you're in that mind state, when your mind is racing and everything is tumultuous, it's easy to pick up a drug habit. It's easy to grab some alcohol. And when you're in that altered state of mind, you don't have the sense, I guess you would say, to stop yourself from doing that. And you see it so often with people who are suffering from PTSD and other sorts of trauma. And it's so sad to see the lifelong effects that Jeffrey Epstein and his conduct has had on these girls. And it really makes me mad that nobody stepped up for all of these years and said, hey, you sick bastard, you're not going to do this anymore. Instead, people helped him, people enabled him, people still did business with him. Epstein had an entire team of women responsible for scheduling the 2 to 3 girls who would provide him with massages each day at his home. Remember that now, 2 to 3 girls per day. Okay? 21 girls a week. All high school girls from these different high schools. How many girls are there? How many unnamed girls are there? These women have since been identified as the core 4. Ghislaine Maxwell, Nadia Marcinkova, Sarah Kellen, Adriana Ross, and Leslie Groff. But the first and only recruiter to be named in incident reports and probable cause affidavits filed by members of the Palm Beach Police Department during their 2005 investigation was Robson. The Florida high school student had actually been recruited to give Epstein a massage at first. So all of the co-conspirators, all of the core 4, they were sliding under the radar, right? Like usual, operating in the shadows. And the only person that was named as a recruiter was this young girl, Haley Robson. I'm sure that Epstein and his attorneys didn't have that set up either, right? I'm sure Mr. I kept my underpants Dershowitz wasn't looking for a fall guy or fall lady in this regard. I met Jeffrey through a classmate who approached me at a resort on Singer Island called the Canopy. My friend said there was an older, wealthier guy in Palm Beach Island who pays girls $200 to massage him. My first reaction was, yeah, sure, I'm definitely interested. Give me your number and we can set something up, says Robson in The Spider, which is on bookshelves now. So I'd like to know who this classmate is, right? Again, there's all these anonymous people, and the only way we're going to be able to track this stuff down and fill in the blanks is if we know all of these people who are involved. And I'm sure that the prosecutors are looking into that, you would think, right? I'm sure that they're trying to piece this all together and build a profile. And I would hope that they're going to talk to Haley Robson and try and see if she has anything to add as far as context about who was the one who recruited her, and just work your way all the way up the chain until you get to the big fish. That's how these large, expansive RICO investigations work. During the car ride, my friend said, the more you do, the more you're going to make. I thought it would just be me in my underwear. I didn't think he would try to fondle me or touch me. I was wrong, of course. Again, who is this friend? You know? During the car ride, my friend said, the more you do, the more you're going to make. I would chase all of these people down if I was the investigators. I would use every resource at my disposal to build this whole entire picture and recreate exactly what happened as close as possible. She thought Epstein might try and harm her, but then Epstein worked out a deal between the two. Epstein informed Robson that she would be paid $200 for every girl she brought in, an offer the student could not refuse. And I know, again, a lot of us say to ourselves, $200, really? But if you have never been broke, if you have never lived in poverty, if you have never lived, hand to mouth, check to check, you don't understand. And I'm not trying to be a dick when I say that, but we all have our own life experiences, and you don't, if you come from money, then you don't understand what it's like coming from nothing, just as much as somebody who's coming from nothing doesn't understand what it's like to be you. And it's easy to talk shit. It's easy to have an opinion, but until you walk in the shoes of somebody who has had nothing, who has come from nothing, you really shouldn't pipe off, to be honest with you. I probably should have moved on with my life and put the whole thing behind me as a bizarre experience. Instead, I made another mistake and agreed to recruit other girls for him, writes Robson. So there was the crucial moment in her life, right? We all have those moments in our life where we probably should have went left, but we went right. And for Robson, unfortunately, this is probably that pinnacle moment for her. And it's something that's probably going to haunt her the rest of her life. It's probably going to weigh on her the rest of her life. And I hope that at some point that she can find some sort of peace. And maybe that peace is coming forward and testifying against Ghislaine Maxwell and the Core Four and the rest of the people who were involved. And to be honest with you, I wouldn't be shocked to see that. Jeffrey said, I like the younger, the better. I thought he meant younger-looking girls, not younger girls. The first girls I recruited were my friends. I knew he'd like them because they were built like me, athletic. I drove the girls to Jeffrey's house and I hung out in the kitchen or by the pool and wait for them to finish the massage. I returned to Jeffrey's house some 24 times. Yikes, this is just crazy. 24 times. Imagine just this the one girl alone. Just Haley Robson alone. Imagine how many other girls were brought into this pyramid scheme. Sage is the youngest girl I brought to Jeffrey. This is brutal reading this. She was 14, but at the time I thought she was a year or two older than me because she was dating my cousin and her body was more mature than mine. Yikes, man. This is just, I honestly don't even know what to say. It's just such a whole tragic ass situation all the way around, right? Whatever happened to Sage? We've never heard anything from Sage, have we? This poor girl, 14 years old? I don't even understand. I don't even understand how this occurred, how it was able to occur on the scale that it occurred without anybody in Florida stepping up to the plate and stopping this shit. Sage was 14 at the time, while Haley was 18. The parents of Sage learned what happened, however, after a fight at school, and soon after contacted police, thus launching the criminal investigation. With parental consent, Sage then contacted Robson as police recorded the call. So this is how it works, right? This is what the police are supposed to do. Somebody comes in, they bring in information, they use that person as a go-between so they can record the conversation and get the other person who is being accused of the crime to incriminate themselves. And that's how these investigations work. Starting at the bottom, you work your way up, and eventually you're at the kingfish. During a sworn taped interview, Sage stated that Haley Robson, a cousin of SG's boyfriend and classmate at Royal Palm Beach High School, worked for a wealthy man and did sexual favors for him, reads a probable cause affidavit obtained by OK. She also admitted that Robson had offered her an opportunity to make money. During the beginning of the month of February, Sage explained that she was first approached by Robson to go with her to Epstein's house. Such a sad state of affairs. A sad state of affairs. And the fact that this was able to occur for so long, it's just mind-blowing to me. I don't mean to keep going back to that, but it's absolutely mind-blowing to me. I don't understand. I truly don't get it. How, as a state prosecutor, did you let this occur? Robson eventually provided police with the name and address of each girl she brought to Epstein. Interviews from that time suggest that she truly believed she was helping them by setting up these appointments with Epstein. Now remember, she's 18. We're not talking about Ghislaine Maxwell, Oxford-trained, very intelligent, or any of the other core four for that matter. Haley Robson wasn't that kind of girl. She wasn't from a rich community. She was an abused girl who was groomed by Jeffrey Epstein at a young age to become one of his recruiters. And this behavior was normalized to her. Robson stated every girl she brought knew what to expect when they arrived. They were told they would provide a massage, possibly naked, and allow some touching, stated in an affidavit from Palm Beach police. I asked her if Sage was aware. She stated every girl she brought knew what to expect. She explained she knew that Sage wanted to make money. She approached Sage and explained about going to work for Jeff. SG agreed and arrangements were made to bring her to Epstein's house on a weekend. So this was all set up. Haley Robson was the go-between at 18 years old. Jeffrey Epstein had his claws into her, and it was her job to bring these younger girls over to the house for a quote-unquote, air quote, massage while she waited in the living room or in the kitchen or whatever, and these girls were being abused by Jeffrey Epstein. Robson then had nothing left to do but wait and see if her story, add the fact that she had been a victim, would help her avoid serving time in prison. The hardest part of the entire investigation for me was seeing my father's grief. He had been a police officer. When my lawyers said there was a possibility that I could be listed as a sex offender, how they'd been charged and convicted, writes Robson, my dad, who was a very private man, broke down in tears. It was the only time I ever saw him cry. I have always, and I can't stress this enough, spoke my truth and have been willing to help law enforcement in this case. So I think that's where she differentiates from these others, right? The core four, they haven't come forward to help. They haven't said one single word. Have they went on record with any lawyers or any authors or anything? Hell no. Whereas Haley Robson understands that she was wrong. She has empathy for what she did. And I think that the police who investigated the first time around probably made the right call by not charging her. I think that if anyone was going to be charged in this case, it would have to be the core four, Epstein and Maxwell. There is no way in hell that Robson should have been charged and they get off the hook, right? Zero chance, in my opinion, that should have occurred. Now, it's one of those tragic-ass stories in this case. In a case that is littered with tragic stories, this is one of the most tragic, in my opinion, this Haley Robson story. How many young girls from high schools were brought to Jeffrey Epstein? How many lives were ruined? And how long did the authorities look the other way? If you'd like to contact me, you can do that at bobbycapucci@protonmail.com. That's BOBBYCAPUCCI@protonmail.com. You can also find me on Twitter at BOBBY_CAPUCCI. All of the links that go with this episode can be found in the description box. In that description box, you will also find the link to the PayPal account and to my new podcast, Unsolved But Not Forgotten. All right, everybody, I will be back tomorrow morning, and we will pick this up then. Have a great night, everyone.